Phil, when you do the minutes, can you do 1 to 4 separately from 5 to 8? Because I won't be voting on 1 to 4 because I wasn't there.
Which meeting?
Alan, just respect, I mean, I appreciate you weren't there, but
Yeah.
the minutes are as they are. If you don't want to vote, you want to be a no vote, we could deal with that. Just procedurally, we didn't do a separate resolution. I don't think it's going to be.
Okay, no, that's fine. I can vote,
Oh.
but I just didn't want to, and
Yeah.
that with the thing, but I don't want it to be a no vote either.
Right.
Thanks.
So the minutes are the minutes. You can vote on minutes that weren't there. You know,
Okay, thank
don't
you.
know them to be wrong. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going now.
It's 1:01. We'll get council to come to their camera screens, hopefully, and we'll get going. We're good. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. on the 13th day of July in the year 2022. I do want to note that we do have one absence in council, and that's from Councillor Jaglowitz. Certainly sends his regrets. Today, we also want to acknowledge that we're on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. It's Indigenous peoples that have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. And it's their stewardship throughout the ages that we truly want to recognize today. Miigwech. We do know that today's meeting is being live streamed. And for those people who are joining us in our public meeting, you are consenting to your image being broadcast. So thank you for that. TML public comment was our traditional method of advising of issues. From the public, we did not receive any comments. We do, however, have a supplementary agenda today, and that is to provide public comments from 3 people. One is Ken Pierce, second is Steve Fauner, and the third is Mr. Ryan Allen. We do have a secondary supplementary agenda that we'll deal with at the time that came out of our meeting this morning. And it will be the consideration of 2 additional resolutions that council would be able to adopt, and that is in item 7B. When we get to those items in particular, we won't have any debate. We will literally first ask whether or not we want to introduce those items to debate on them. And strictly, we need 2/3 to be able to put the item on the floor, whether we want to vote on it today or not, because it would be a notice, a motion without notice. And with that, do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest this morning? Councillor Kelley.
Thank you, and through you. Yes, item 8D is the report, and I believe 9A5 is the resolution or the bylaw. I have a ownership interest in some real estate which does not directly abut the subject land, but it's within 60 feet of the subject land.
Okay, thank you. There's some online paperwork. I assume you've filled that out and submitted that to the clerk?
Not for this
Duly
particular
noted.
one, but others. Thank you.
But okay, well, this particular one, we're going to need to do that. So
Okay.
Our clerk's department will be noted. So thank you for that. During those 2 items, we'll get you to turn your camera off. Anyone else? Any disclosures of interest? I am not seeing any, so we can move into our regular scheduled business. And it is noted that Councillor Edwards was not in attendance for a couple of these items, but we're just approving the minutes at this time. So I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the July 13th, 2022 consent agenda, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. And that's number 1, our June 15th General Finance Committee meeting minutes and action items 1 through 7. June 15th council minutes, June 16th Planning Committee meeting minutes and action items 1 through 12. June 17th, 2022 Special Planning Committee meeting minutes and action items 1 to 2. June 20th Special Planning Committee meeting minutes. June 21st Special Planning Committee minutes. June 24th Special Council minutes, as well as June 24th special planning committee meeting minutes. Any comments or questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Mazan has a question.
Just following on my colleague, Councillor Edwards, I was not here for many of those meetings. I just want to confirm that I can still vote.
You absolutely can. Thank you very much. So appreciate
you.
that confirmation. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried. Council, thank you very much. It seems that we had a number of special meetings last month. I don't think we have as many this month, just one or two. Moving on, where are we going? Pardon me. Oh, Councillor Bridgman has a question, I'm told.
No, just Mayor Harding, my internet is becoming very unstable, so you may see me freezing out off and on, just to let you know.
Not a problem. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Moving on to item 7A, consider resolution short-term accommodations. I guess we should move to that. Was requested our June 16th. Who wants to introduce this item at this particular time? Mr. Pink, maybe? Mr. Sharp? Mr. Bueller? Well, we might, as we're missing some staff in this particular case, or may not be fully there. Oh, Mr. Pink is joining us right now. Mr. Pink, I'll let you talk about our short-term rental accommodation licensing.
Thank you, Worship, and sorry about that delay. Good afternoon, council and community and staff. You likely recall the discussion at the last planning committee meeting. It was raised as, I believe, new business. So there was not there was a brief staff report that outlined, it was an informational report on the background work that staff in the municipality had previously done on short-term rental licensing. However, as it was an informational report, there was no resolution or recommendation. However, ultimately at the conclusion of the discussion, there was direction received to staff, and we felt it was appropriate to solidify that in a formal resolution. So there is a record of the outcome. I think this matter is fairly substantial and likely best documented in a resolution as opposed to a set of minutes. And I believe the draft resolution before you captures the direction received, which is ultimately to, as time permits, review the licensing bylaw that staff previously prepared, as well as the previous direction to prepare an AMPS penalty system bylaw, and return to planning committee for review of those when able.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any questions on this? Basically, this gets our ball rolling again in updating our bylaws so that we can deal with the ever-emerging problem of short-term rentals. Not seeing any, so I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Whereas Council previously endorsed measures to address concerns surrounding the short-term rental of properties, including a code of conduct, review of municipal bylaws, and enhancement of bylaw enforcement resources. And whereas despite the implementation of these measures, communities' concerns continue to be raised surrounding negative impacts of short-term rental of properties, now therefore be it resolved that the resources and project workloads permit staff are hereby directed to update the previously prepared draft short-term rental licensing bylaw, as well as prepare a bylaw establishing an administrative monetary penalty system, otherwise known as AMPS or AMPS, for planning committee's consideration, and that upon endorsement by planning committee, the community be engaged on the potential new regulations. And finally, that appropriate resources required to implement the draft regulations be included in a business plan as part of the draft 2023 budget for council consideration. Any questions on the resolution? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Pink, and the rest of our planning department, as well as Mr. Kennedy. You've got your work to cut out to try and tackle this problem. Obviously, won't be done for next month, but certainly the goal would be to have this implemented for the following season. Surplus land, we have a report on Doherty, but let's go to 7B. Wait a minute, where am I here?
Those are the added things.
Oh, okay, let's go to 7B. Good point. Thank you very much. We do have, from this morning's meeting, we have consideration of two separate resolutions. And I'll ask, the first, we do need 2/3 vote for these to be considered. The first resolution would be moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Edwards, whereas Section 3516 of Township Council Procedural By-law 2019-79 provides that any motion may be introduced without notice if council without debate dispenses with notice by a 2/3 vote. Now therefore be resolved that Township Council hereby dispenses without notice to consider and vote on the following bylaw. And that is bylaw 2022-111, being a bylaw to regulate and control parking in the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of debating this bylaw this afternoon? That is carried with 2/3. Just for the record, anyone opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, you've got that, but that is carried with 2/3. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to go to this other one to see whether we put this on the table first of all, and that is moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Edwards, whereas Section 3516 of Township Council Procedural By-law 2019-79 provides that any motion may be introduced without notice if council without debate dispenses with notice by a 2/3 vote. Now therefore be it resolved that Township Council hereby dispenses with notice to consider and vote on the following bylaw. And that's bylaw 2022-115, being a bylaw to provide an exemption to bylaw 2005-83, a bylaw to control noise to Shake the Lake charity event on August 12th and August 13th, 2022. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I believe that carries as well. For the record, I would be opposed to that. Thank you. Okay, so those two carry, which means we can continue on and we will consider those two bylaws. The first bylaw is regarding parking on Armstrong Point Road. And Mr. Becking, did you want to quickly introduce this? This was an item from this morning and what we are considering. Mr. Becking's paying attention. There we go. His camera is off, but his phone is unmuted. Just so that the public is aware of what we're discussing.
Yes, Your Worship. Further direction of General and Finance Committee, staff reviewed parking restrictions and parking conditions along Armstrong Point Road, and the staff recommendation is that an amendment to the parking bylaw be passed by council to prohibit parking on both sides of Armstrong Point Road from a point 50 meters north of the intersection with District of Muskoka Road 118 to a point 400 meters north of the intersection.
Okay. Council, any questions regarding this? I have one question for staff in particular, as this is again a motion without notice that we would be affecting a bylaw as of today. I guess this, once a sign would go up potentially tomorrow, we could start ticketing vehicles as soon as this weekend on Armstrong Point Road. And I guess to Director Becking, is that, or maybe to Mr. Kennedy, is that the intention of this? So I put that out there. My personal preference, as known, was to delay this 30 days, but I know council wants to move it forward. Mr. Kennedy, maybe just explain when we can start ticketing.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Legally, once the signs are installed, we are able to ticket vehicles. That being said, we can give a couple days grace period in case, some vehicle is for some reason left there and someone's gone away for a couple days. We can definitely give a little bit of a grace period when the signs go up before we actually start ticketing. I'm okay with doing that. That's more of a discretionary thing on our end. So we can endeavor to do something like that, just so people get used to the signs before we actually start ticketing people.
Okay. Anybody other comments, questions at this point? I will read the resolution moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be resolved that bylaw 2022-111, being a bylaw to regulate and control parking in the corporation of the Township of Muskoka Lakes, be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Any further comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I believe that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a question maybe for Director Becking or Mr. Kennedy in this particular case. And again, we have now implemented a no parking on a street without notice. Would we like to, or is there an opportunity for us to notify in writing a Post-it note or something on the doors of each of the affected properties so that they're not caught off guard and as they drive down a road and potentially park this weekend, not knowing about it, that this is a change? I don't always notice what signs go on my property, but maybe that would be healthy for us to do. Mr. Becky, Mr. Kennedy?
Through the chair, sorry, you cut out at the end, but I think I heard what was being asked. Typically, we don't necessarily do something like that. However, if council wishes that we send some letters out to the surrounding owners that will be affected by this, we're more than happy to. But again, not really something that we've done normally. Once the signs go up, like I said, we could do a grace period where we leave it for a couple days so that people at least see the signs and are aware of it. And then from that point forward, it would be enforced. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kelley, do you want to comment? We need you to unmute. Peter?
Thank you. Thank you. And through you, just a real quick question. There were no parking signs, I think, along parts of this stretch already. Have they been taken down? Or here's my point, and Mayor Harding may have a really good point. If we just put new signs up or start enforcing against the existing signs, which have not been effective in the past, I do think that probably the local people who are parking there need to be given 3 or 4 days notice to get the cars off the road before we start enforcing, unless we've already taken all those signs down and would be putting new ones up.
Director Becking?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship. The signs exist. Unfortunately, there was no legal authority to put up the signs, so the signs are still in place. The effect of the bylaw that you've just passed extends that prohibition further to the north. And to Mr. Kennedy's point, we do not, as a matter of practice, give notice of intent to implement the bylaw, but we can do so if that's what council wishes us to do.
Okay, Councillor Hayes?
Thank you, and through you, I would very much like notices to go out. This didn't go through the normal route where there would be the 30 days pause where everybody would start talking about it. So I would have some comfort if the residents in the area were notified that it is no parking, you will be ticketed.
Okay, any other comments right now? I think Councillor Hayes has summarized some of my comments. It is appropriate, I think, to go beyond and probably more than a mail notice. The fact that it's maybe a dozen residences on the road, we could probably hand deliver something to the residents or put a notice on their door that this is coming into effect. Councillor Kelley brought up the fact, I believe, that there's signs already that say no parking, but we're not picketing people. They don't have any idea that we're having this meeting today, and all of a sudden now they're going to be ticketed. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, I had the same comment. Even sticking the notice under cars that are parked there right now is folded up and put it under their window shield wipers would be. We'll get the message across as well. Thank you.
Okay, Council, anybody object or disagree with that sort of more personal notification of the properties? I think we're all in favor of that. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Becking, you're okay with direction to do what we can to signify people before we start really enforcing this bylaw? So greatly appreciate it. Thank you. I have a second resolution moved by Councillor Mazan. First moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-115 being a bylaw to provide an exemption to bylaw 2005-83, a bylaw to control noise to Shake the Lake charity event on August 12th and August 13th, 2022 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Council, any questions on this? This for the public's notice is to allow the noise bylaw to be extended from 11 p.m. till 12 p.m. on both the Friday and the Saturday evening in regards to this event. Not seeing any further comments. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Taking care of those. Thank you very much. Core asset plan. Who wants to introduce this here? Sorry. What item are we at? F. Mr. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, we've been actively working on this initiative since the beginning of the year. We have circulated to you each section of the draft report, and there have been some fairly minor edits to reflect comments that have been received. The document before you is the compilation of all of those sections as modified. And I've also gone through and tried to clean up some of the ghoulies and grammatical errors and that sort of thing. So there's the finished document is before you.
Okay. I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the core asset management plan dated July 2022 and attached as Appendix 1 to report number PW 2022-36 be approved. Council, any further comments or questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that is carried. Thank you very much. And for those who are following along, I just had to remind myself that items A, B, C, and D are reports that will follow up with appropriate bylaws later on, so we can talk about them. Their shore road allowance and surplus lands from our land and agreements coordinator, but we'll deal with them at bylaw section. Public Works Board of Contract, Glen Gordon Road. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tenders were called for the proposed road reconstruction project in accordance with township policy. 2 bids were received. Staff are recommending award of the contract to the lowest compliant bidder, which is Fowler Construction.
Okay. Council, any questions on this time? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. Through you to Director Becking. So I've had 2 discussions yesterday with people in Bala about the parking ingress egress that you referenced in this report, where we established new improved sidewalks there to improve the access in and out of the driveways. People are questioning the construction. I know that we as a township did it instead of a more formal company. 2 people have questioned the construction. I wonder if at the very least, Director Becking, if you'd be so kind to humor me and maybe go have a look at it. I don't know, maybe you do inspections before, after all work is completed by the township, but some people were questioning where the pavement meets the cement, as if to say that it didn't appear to be a long-lasting solution to that problem, which here we are giving up $16,000 that we would have used to do the sidewalk. I'm not suggesting anything other than I wonder if we could have a look at that. Thank you.
Director Becking, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Yeah, there was some leakage from the underside of the form, and staff will go in there in the early fall and make corrections to that. It's a relatively minor defect, and we'll get it sorted out.
Okay. Okay, I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that contract T 2022-37 for the reconstruction of the Glen Gordon Road Hill be awarded to Fowler Construction Company Limited for the bid price of $278,304.30 plus HST, and that the 2022 capital budget be amended to reduce project PW 2020-82 Bala sidewalk reconstruction by $16,600 and project PW 2020-01 Everly Road Phase 2 reconstruction by $11,700 and increase project PW 2020 or 220, excuse me, 81 by $28,300. And I probably screwed up all of those appropriate 2020s. But I think we know what they are, and they're all stated in the agenda package. And that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the contracts. Any further comments? All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to read this next resolution moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that an additional building inspector position be authorized for the building department staff complement. And this is funded out of our building reserve. We certainly, with the increase that we have in our building department, we need more inspectors. Any comments from council on this? Okay, I have read the resolution. All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you. Okay, shorter road allowance. I'm going to read the resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that portions of original shore road allowance on Skeleton Lake lying in front of concession 12 lot 10 watt, designated as parts 2 and 3 on plan 35R 26757 Doherty, rolls 2, 21, 12, and 13 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001. And further, that bylaw 2022-97 to stop, up, close, and convey those portions of original shore road allowance designated as parts 2 and 3 on 35R 26757 be given 3 readings and passed. Council, any comments? Not seeing any. Do we have any from our landing coordinator? I think we're all good over there. Thank you. Council, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. I have another one moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that a portion of township road allowance lying in front of concession 12 and 13, part lot 21 Monk, designated as part 1 on plan 35R 26784 Alexander, roll 9, 12, 34, 03, be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and further the bylaw 2022-98 to stop, up, close, and convey that portion of township allowance, road allowance designated as parts 1 on 35R 26784 be giving 3 readings and passed. Joel, any comments from our planning department or clerk's department? Nothing. We're good. Council, any questions? All those in favor? That 2 is carried. Thank you. I think 2 more. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Be it resolved that a portion of original shore road allowance on 3 Mile Lake lying in front of concession 6, lot 14 watt, designated as part 1 on plan 35R 26804 Prot, roll 2, 410 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and further the bylaw 2022-102 to stop, up, close, and convey that portion of original shore road allowance designated as part 1, 35R 26804 be given 3 readings and passed. Any comments, staff? Not seeing any. Thank you. Council, any questions? All those in favor? And that one is carried. I think our last one. Oh, we got one more. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be resolved that portions of original shore road allowance on 9 Mile Lake laying in front of concession 14, lot 14 would designate as parts 2, 3, and 4 on plan 35R 26785 Archer, roll 8, 12, 42 be declared surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and further bylaw 2022-103 to stop, up, close, and convey those portions of original shore road allowance designated as parts 2, 3, 4 on 35R 26785 be given 3 readings and passed. Nothing. And council, any comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That one is carried. Okay, up to Jaglowitz. Resolution moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-105 to establish block G on plan M524 or a 1-foot reserve as a public highway to be known and from part of Duke Street be given 3 readings and passed. Staff, any comments, questions? We're good there. And to council, any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And we'll bring, I think, Councillor Kelley back. Make sure where we are here. Boom, boom, boom. One more shore road. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the
Yes,
bylaw officer did have his hand up, so I was curious if he had something to add to.
I did not notice that. Mr. Kennedy, did you have your hand in the air?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you for that. One more, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that portions of original shore road allowance on 3 Mile Lake laying in front of concession 8, part lot 15 Watt, designated as parts 2, plan 35R 26670. Kunka Preston, roll 21612 be declared surplus. And that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001. And further, that bylaw 2022-106 to stop, up, close, and convey those portions of original shore road allowance designated as parts 235 26670 be given 3 readings and passed. Nothing from staff and council. Any questions? Bylaw officer is okay. All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. Okay. Where are we going? I think number 8. Nope, number 7. And who wants to introduce this here from a staff perspective? Harvesting, removal, and damaging destruction of trees on private property. Mr. Pink, did you want to introduce this quickly? Or maybe not? I don't know if you want to, David.
Worship.
Okay.
Just very quickly, I know councillors will recall the lengthy discussions we've had over the last year reviewing both the tree preservation and site alteration bylaws. At the last planning committee meeting, they were recommended for approval, and staff have placed them in front of you. We have included on the agenda red line versions, so you see the minor changes that were made since the committee meeting. And I believe there may be delegates on the agenda that wish to speak to the matters before council gives consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And we do have 2 delegates, I believe. And the first one who's on our regular agenda, I believe, is Mr. Sifft. We'll bring him into the meeting. Let him speak first, and then we'll go to Mr. Pierce on our supplemental agenda. Okay, Mr. Sifft, I believe you are in the meeting. We'll get you to turn your camera on. There we go. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Jason Sifft, 3687 Highway 118 West, POB 1J0. First off, I'd like to thank council members for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm here representing both myself and our Muskoka, a group of local residents, business owners, and cottagers looking for a balanced and sensible approach to development in Muskoka that provides landowners with what they want to enjoy their properties while also protecting Muskoka. Let's move into the bylaws. In regards to the land that this bylaw affects, I asked members to reconsider changing the distance from 200 to 300 feet on mainland properties. I'm not sure what goal this accomplishes. We have yet to be told of examples where we're having this issue on mainland. Please reconsider this change. I've said it before and I will say it again. Enforcement, inspections, and education are the most important. This is where the energy should be spent, not creating more regulations. We would also like to ask you to reconsider the patio size as outlined in the new draft bylaw. A patio and a gazebo should be interchangeable on lots of less than 300 feet of frontage, and a sauna still allowed. On lots larger than 300 feet, a larger patio should be allowed, say 300 to 400 square feet. Another option could be to allow a patio based on 1% of frontage with a min and a max similar to a dock. Please listen carefully, as here are a few reasons why. First, as drafted, a patio needs to be 15 feet back from the lake, whereas a gazebo can be 3.3 feet from a lake. from the lake. This is a significant improvement. A patio is significantly less build form than a gazebo. There's no foundation, walls, or roof. The bylaws allow you to clear 10 feet of trees around a gazebo. This would represent approximately 1,100 square feet of tree removal. This should help you understand why even a larger patio makes more sense than a gazebo and should be encouraged. Patios are made to be more permeable. A gazebo is not at all. And for the most part, patios can be placed between existing trees. Patios also do not require deep digging to bedrock or soil suitable for a foundation. We hope that these reasons help to illustrate why we feel it can be used as an improvement to the gazebo. Even if it's a bit larger than the physical gazebo, its impact on the land is much less. To sum it up, this bylaw as drafted just doesn't work. If this bylaw is drafted correctly, it will encourage patios over gazebos, protecting more trees in the 50-foot setbacks. As a town, we should be use creative approaches to encourage less tree removal, and the best way to do that is by giving property owners something in exchange for doing it a preferred way. As Member Kelley was recently quoted saying in the article, as a council, we need to get creative and look at more consequential ways to stop this behavior. Well, I would say to him and this council, let's do it. I've been saying this for the last year. The current draft is not creative. It's just a new regulation that will not help to stop the problems we are having. If this changes as outlined, people will not give up the rights to these buildings. In conclusion, I will ask committee to please think about our points as outlined today and reconsider both the setbacks these bylaws restrict on mainland, details around patios. Thank you for my time.
Okay, thank you. Council, do we have any questions of Mr. Sifft or staff after that presentation? Not seeing any. Mr. Sifft, thank you for joining us today. Greatly appreciated.
Thank
And
you.
also we'll bring in Ken Pierce at this particular time. Mr. Pierce. Bring you in, turn on, there you go. Welcome, Mr. Pierce. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours. You're on mute, Ken. Ken, your camera or your computer is muted. There you go.
That better? Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Harding. Ken Pierce, 2232 Muskoka Road, 169. Just 2 brief comments. We are pleased that this has come before you. It's been a long road. We are satisfied with the terms. I heard Mr. Sifft say that more patios and larger patios. With respect, I think that the patios provisions are adequate the way they are. I think that the fact that there is no 15-foot envelope permitted around patios will mean that people will build them around trees and within trees and in clearings, and that that should work just fine. The second comment was, and we've made this a couple of times, just for clarity, not a major change, but when you have definitions and defined terms where you capitalize them or bold them, you need to put in your definition section that where a term is shown in bold or capitalized in the document or in the bylaw, that it links back to the definitions. And so in order for it to be enforceable, you need to have that language. It's in the official plan, it's in your comprehensive zoning bylaw, and we would respectfully request that that be included here. I think it's just a minor correction that would make the bylaw enforceable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pierce. Council, any questions of Mr. Pierce or staff after this delegation? Okay, Ken, thank you very much for your time and appreciate it. I will follow up with your comment to staff with one question from a capitalization perspective or readability. Is that possible as we move through this in the bylaw? Because I do agree sometimes it does make life a little bit easier. Mr. Kennedy.
Through the mayor, the defined terms in the bylaw are bolded, as you can see in both the clean versions, if you will. The suggestion from Mr. Pierce is not in any other regulatory bylaw aside from the zoning bylaw. Me personally, I have never ever seen a justice or a judge say that if it's not defined, then it just goes to your regular dictionary definition. But if it's defined in the bylaw, regardless if it's capitalized or bolded or italicized, it's still a defined term. So at this point, we aren't going to make any other changes unless council decides to add that small language in that Mr. Pierce is asking. But again, I've never had any situation where a judge or a justice has called that out.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate that, according to Mr. Kennedy, we're covered off. Councillor Kelley?
Thank you, and through you. I hadn't heard Mr. Pierce's comments, but I did have almost identical comments in a different remedy than his. I did not read the clean copies. I only read the red line, read them real carefully. And in both of these bylaws, there are terms that are defined with a capital at the beginning of each word that we never use again. Or I think we're trying to use them, but we're not capitalizing them. And the fundamental sort of judicial rule on interpreting language in a document is it identically, is it spelled out exactly the same way that it's defined? And in this case, Mr. Kennedy hit the nail on the head. It wouldn't be, and it would default to whatever standard. Are we all still here? A standard dictionary definition. I think we're missing some people.
We just lost.
I think the
Yeah.
office just got kicked out, Pete.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the other question that I have, there's two, and really, Rob, it's for you.
Pete, you might as well wait, Pete.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we can go on legally.
Yeah, I think we're off recording and everything too. So
We have Rob captive though, so we can
Yeah.
get all kinds of good information there.
Just so I'm actually leaving the meeting now. I've already let Lauren know that, but I just want to let you know that's where I disappeared. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, Ruth.
Good timing, Ruth. She said, and just as an FYI, I'm a little bit unstable, not me personally, but my internet today. Are you as well?
I've been freezing ever since council started. This morning was fine, but today, like as of this meeting, I've been freezing in and out.
So I've been trying to know, you don't want to interrupt anybody, but I put my hand up at one point going, I hope I just voted for what I was thinking I just voted for. That's terrible.
We are live and everyone in the province heard that.
Well, no, but yeah, fair enough. It had to do, and it did come across. You are correct, Councillor Jaglowitz. It is difficult.
I don't think we're being broadcast right now. Didn't we go offline? Yeah.
I'll check.
There's only 6 people watching.
I just came back on. What happened?
Everything. It's done. We adjourn.
Yay. I thought it was me. I hit the button to put my hand up and I broke it.
The clerk back.
You could have a whole book full of disruptions of IT at the office.
Did you guys remain on the entire time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We are, just FYI, we are still actually broadcasting on YouTube. I just checked.
No. Okay.
Just noticed.
Everybody got kicked out.
We've been having intermittent power shortages, very brief ones in the last week. So hopefully this is the power outage for the day.
It is odd. They've been coming and going quite frequently in Port Carling.
Yeah.
And for the record, we're going to power outage as a defined term in all of our.
Capital P, capital O.
Councillor Roberts is still trying to get back in, Mayor Harding. So I have him on the phone here, but he also got kicked out.
We will let people in as we can, and once we get quorum back, we probably have quorum, but we'll try and get everybody in.
And Ruth Nichelle excused herself. She's done the meeting, right, Lauren? Okay.
Councillor Councillor Roberts is still trying, but I also wanted to note that there was a few of us that did not get kicked out, but all of us were experiencing some internet instability regardless. So that was just a general comment.
Are we all on Rogers?
I'm not.
Okay, we are back and had Councillor Kelley hand in the air. Sorry for the delay. Those people who are watching on YouTube.
I think some of it was heard, so I won't start from the top. Simple issue is I'm quite comfortable with where we've landed on both of these bylaws in terms of their intent, but I think there are I think they are not tight enough from a drafting perspective to be enforceable. And there are two areas that came to my attention just reading through them. There are defined terms in the definition section, and every defined term starts with a capital letter. When they're used later in the body, they're not always capitalized. So that's number one. It's a drafting legal issue. The other issue, and it was a question originally rather than a comment, but there are references to distance from water. And in some places we specify distance from navigable waterway. In some places we say distance from the high water mark of a navigable waterway. I don't know why there's a difference. But those kinds of things will kill it if we ever have to take legal action and somebody challenges the enforceability. The guts of it don't need to be changed. I think it just needs to be caught. And I'll go back to what I prefaced with. I've only gone through red line versions. If there's a change subsequent to the red line, if the final version picked up all of those little picks and discrepancies, then there's no issue. But I have not looked at them. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Mr. Kennedy. And if we had, you commented that we don't capitalize or we don't bold the defined terms within the copy of all of our bylaws. If we had problems in the past in enforcing our bylaws because they were not bolded or whatever in the body of the bylaw?
Through you, no, we haven't. That's never ever been brought up. This is the first time that we've actually bolded terms in a new bylaw. Even other bylaws that have been created, both from myself and Mr. Becking, they haven't had any bolded terms. So this is kind of a new thing that we've done, and goes back to my previous municipalities that I was working at. Just more, I guess, as we've been discussing, it's more of a legal thing. But again, I've never had this been called out before.
Councillor Kelley, you want to follow up or supplemental?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, that's exactly the point, though, Mr. Kennedy. You're absolutely right. When you decide to embark on this and capitalize the terms in the definition section, you have to use them in the identical sort of way, capitalized throughout the body of it. And it is a pain, and it's a pain to chase it through and track it down. But when you're reading it and you suddenly see the word gazebo without a capital G, it doesn't mean what the capital G gazebo means under the definition section. That's all. So it's just tracking the definitions and make sure that they're spelled out or used through the body of the bylaw so that they can come back and be tied specifically to the definition we ascribe to it.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciated. Councillor Hayes?
Thank you. And through you, a couple of things. Mr. Sifft mentioned that patios would be better than gazebos, and I have to agree with him. Even if you look at the view from the canoe, you don't see a patio from the water, but you do see a gazebo. So if anyone was interested in entertaining having patio sizes larger to encourage patios over gazebos, I would support that. Also, I believe we were sent out earlier from Mr. Kennedy what was going on the website for the the site alteration and the tree conservation. Could I ask that the lands affected be included in the front page, which is kind of like the introduction to the website, so that people know right off the bat whether or not this bylaw affects their property? Because that prevents them from having to drill down to see whether this bylaw actually affects them.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask council the question to Councillor Hayes' comment about less impact of a patio, more impact of a gazebo. Do we want to consider that? I would tend to support that same view, that and especially a gazebo at 3.3 feet from the water's edge and a patio at 15. I'm not sure we're as consistent in, and we talk about built form on the water. Having a gazebo at 3 feet is certainly far more built form than having a patio with some chairs interspersed, as even Mr. Pierce said, in and around the trees. Council, what's your thoughts on patio versus gazebo? Anyone want to chime in on that? Councillor Bridgman, did you want to comment on it?
Well, I will. If I could just support Councillor Kelley on the wording. We want to be absolutely sure we don't get caught up on this somewhere legally. So I understand what he's saying. It's been consistent in the other bylaws, not capitalized, that's fine, but here it needs to be consistent. Okay, I'll move on now to Councillor Hayes. I don't have any interest in increasing the size of the patios. It's less devastation to the trees, and they can have a bigger patio up back. So I like this the way it sits. So I'm not interested in opening up that discussion again.
Okay. Anybody else as a comment? I'm not sure, just as a clarification to Councillor Hayes. I think it was, you get a gazebo and something, but I believe Mr. Sifft wanted it interchangeable. And to me, if I had to choose between a patio or a gazebo, I would choose a patio. I don't need to make them bigger, but I would certainly encourage more patios than gazebos from an impact on the waterfront, would be my comment. Maybe Mr. Kennedy, you can explain sort of what we're allowing as a high level, and to Mr. Sift's comment about patios versus gazebos.
Through you, for both of these bylaws, we cut it off at the 300 feet of assessed frontage. So if any property has less than 300 feet of assessed frontage, we're allowing one of the four items that are listed in the bylaw. Either it's going to be the patio, the gazebo, the sauna, or the pump house. If you are over 300, we are allowing for two of those four. The interchangeability that we've added in there as well is if you don't want the gazebo, the sauna, or the pump house, you are allowed to build a patio, one patio, and we would allow it to increase to the 300 square feet. That's essentially the bottom line of what we're looking at for anything within the first 50 feet. As Councillor Brisbane has just said, you are more than welcome to build a patio larger than what is in this bylaw that is further than 50 feet back.
Okay, understood. From a staff perspective, to Councillor Kelley and Councillor Bridgman's perspective on the capitalization and changes, I would agree as well that we want to make sure that everything in this is bulletproof, and if we need to start amending our bylaws with defined terms appropriately throughout, let's start here. How would we affect that change? Do we need to pause this for 30 days till council can approve the actual wording? Can we do it through an amendment to this? What's the best path forward? And I'll go to Mr. Kennedy first of all, and then to Councillor Kelley.
Through you, I can go through the bylaws again just to ensure that everything is kosher. Whether or not my question, I guess, to council would be, do we want bolding and capitalization? Do we want just bolding, just capitalization? What do we want to do here?
Okay, I will turn to the lawyers in the crowd, and I also know that our Director of Legislative Services has some legal background to our best method forward. Councillor Kelley, comment first of all, and then maybe our clerk.
Thank you. Through you, in response to your question, rather than defer on this, I'm happy to approve it, subject to a legal opinion that a lawyer's gone through it and tightened up and made sure that the use of all the terms. We don't want to change any of the conditions. We just want to make sure it is enforceable the way we think it reads. That's really all it is.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'd be happy to approve it with the condition that, Mr. Pink and Mr. Kennedy receive an opinion from legal counsel satisfactory to them. I don't even know if that's within our purview to do something like that, but if we can, I'd be comfortable just relying on some outside lawyer to look at it and tell us that it's binding and enforceable.
Okay, thank you. I think the question is, and I might turn, I see Mr. Pink has turned on his camera. I also know the clerk potentially wants to chime in on this. My understanding is that we potentially cannot pass this and then make amendments to it with language, with gold, with caps, should we need to. But Mr. Pink, did you want to speak? And then I'll go to our clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd look to Lauren a little bit, but I don't believe we could approve the bylaw subject to a legal review. You need to be very clear as to what you're passing. We would have to return. What I do believe is an option, if it's a simple matter of ensuring that every defined term is capitalized, I believe you can pass a resolution approving the bylaw subject to that occurring. That's a clear instruction. Again, I look to the clerk to confirm that. I think as Mr. Kennedy has pointed out, though, I mean, I stand to be corrected. But all of our bylaws have defined terms. Sometimes they're bolded, sometimes they're italicized, sometimes they're capitalized. I've never run into an issue personally where bylaws have been deemed invalid if it's not consistent throughout, but certainly look to aim to be as tight and consistent as possible. And I think it would be a fairly easy job task to go through that bylaw and ensure every defined term is capitalized. I look to, again, Lauren, whether the bylaw can be approved subject to that occurring. I believe it could.
Okay, I'm actually, before I go to you, Councillor Roberts, I'm going to go to our clerk for an opinion as the best path forward to ensure we cross our T's and dot our I's. Lauren?
Thank you. And through you, I'd suggest that from a transparency and just making this the cleanest process, just to defer for 30 days. Your options are either defer and have it come back with all of the changes made, or you pass the text as in, because you're giving 3 readings to the text that's before you today. And at that point, you would have to do an amending bylaw to change any of that text. So an amending bylaw that had many, many lines changing many bolds and underlines and definitions just becomes very onerous and confusing for the public. So I would suggest deferring would be my opinion.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go to Councillor Roberts and see if we can land this airplane.
And through you, also, Councillor Kelley mentioned the use of navigable waterways and high water mark. I think that should be tightened up in the final version. Does anyone disagree with me or Councillor Kelley?
I think that's appropriate as well. So what I'm hearing and sort of sensing, regardless, it wouldn't become official for 30 days. If council's okay, based on the comments we've heard today, we would bring this back fully changed with appropriate caps, bolded, done at the next council meeting. Do we get it? I'm seeing a couple nodding of heads. Anyone in disagreement with that? Okay. Councillor Mazan, and then I think we're going to move on.
Thank you. And through you, just as I'm rereading this too, if we are doing some further tweaking, just for simplicity, I think it's helpful to have the actual definitions included, and just given the sensitivity to this particular zoning bylaw. So as I was going back and looking at the definition for gazebo, and it's referring me to the Township of Muskoka Lakes Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, which I just think if we can bring that into this actual document, it helps provide clarity instead of encouraging people to have to go one further step to make sure that there's an understanding. So my understanding, for example, the difference between a gazebo and a patio would be a gazebo is part of the built form on a property. So it actually, because there is a roof and walls, would be included in the 10%. And I think that's an important distinction for people to understand as they embark on a building plan for their property. So just for simplicity, I
Appreciate that. I think Director Pink wanted to just comment on that because I know we did have that discussion last.
Did you? I thought
around,
I did watch it. But it was something that I thought could be helpful in here.
Director Pink, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, but there was a lengthy discussion on that, and there was direction to add the definitions. Mr. Kennedy and I spoke at length, and we thought typically what's done, and I think what's preferable, is the reference to the other bylaw, so that once the zoning bylaw, when it is updated, it automatically updates in your other bylaws. Once you put multiple definitions in multiple bylaws, it can become administratively cumbersome to keep them consistent. So we chose that on purpose. However, should committee direct or council, sorry, we can insert the definition into this bylaw if that's council's wish. And just for everyone's clarity, this bylaw before you, the tree conservation, site alteration, it's not regulating buildings or structures. So the gazebo rules will always remain in the zoning bylaw, and that's not before you. It has a roof, so it is included in lot coverage, a gazebo. That's not proposed to change. That again is a zoning bylaw matter. Hope that helps provide some clarity.
So with that, supplemental, with that further clarification, I would actually support Director Pink's thinking. So thank you.
Okay, so council, I'm getting the sense we're going to defer this back. We're going to include capitalization bold where appropriate so that we can reference back to any terms that are defined within the bylaw. Make sure that we're consistent on high water mark, navigable waterway, those kind of things are the comments that I've heard today. Is there anything else that we need to tweak on this particular? Okay, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Pink, I think you guys are okay for coming back with some additional. I got thumbs up. There we go. Thank you. And it actually brings up a point, Mr. Pink, maybe in the future, we actually just need to do a bylaw of defined terms that everything relates to all of our bylaws. And it's just strictly a defined terms bylaw might help us with many of the items. Okay, Councilor Mazan.
Thank you. It's for you. I just couldn't let this pass because I believe this is getting its own page. I do think having key terms somehow highlighted on that page, just to make it easy for people, would be a very helpful addition. So I just couldn't let it pass what you just said. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we are going to defer this and it will come back next iteration. Where am I going to next? Help me here. Landscape properties, that's in the same. So that's 9.8A, correct? There was a second part to this, just to confirm with the council that we are going to officially defer the modifications made. So it's more of the site alteration perspective, just to confirm that we're going to defer both of these and they will both come back. Council, are we in agreement to defer this as well? Madam Clerk, getting a thumbs up, so thank you very much. Appreciate that. 9A9 is next, and that's site plan control. Can we? Okay, I will put a pause on that one. What's under different item? Council, I'm going to actually just suggest as we sort of regroup here, and I know we're waiting for some delegations, we're moving along relatively quickly. Why don't we just take a quick 10-minute break at this point, and we will come back if that's okay. 10 minutes. Okay, council, we'll try and get you back if you can hear my voice. Okay, council, we're going to continue on with our regular scheduled programming. Thank you. And we're going to move on to our zoning bylaws, section number 9B. And our first one is a ZBA in the name of Ivy and Smith. Who wants to introduce this one? Emily, welcome, Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. In June, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0122ML bylaw 2022-016 and consent application B0122ML in the name of Ivy and Smith. The subject property is known municipally as 2 Loon Island. Consent application B0122ML will create 1 additional lot. The purpose of zoning bylaw 2022-016 is to provide exemptions from the minimum lot frontage and area requirements in the waterfront residential WR4 zone, to restrict shoreline structures to the envelope shown hashed on Schedule 2, and to permit a reduced front yard setback for a septic system leaching bed of 85 feet. In June, Planning Committee recommended the approval of the application to Council. If Council is considering approval of the application, the following minor amendment has been recommended: that the building envelope for the proposed dwelling on the severed lot be restricted to the envelope shown on the revised site plan. No new submissions were received after the June Planning Committee meeting. I have no further comments, but would be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read first and second, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-16 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, Ivy and Smith, Rule 4, 245201, be read at first and second time. Any questions on first and second? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Roberts is just missing on camera, but we do still have quorum. We have been requested for a minor amendment. I'll read the minor amendment moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2022-16 Ivy Smith, and this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public consultation or circulation. Hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall consist of restricting the building envelopes for the proposed dwelling in the severed lot to the envelope recommended in the water quality impact assessment prepared by Beacon Environmental Limited, dated December 2021, and updating Schedule 2 to the bylaw 2022-16 with the revised site plan. Any questions on the minor amendment? All those in favor? That is carried as well. Third and final, moved by Councillor Mazan. Let's go to Councillor Hayes, sorry. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-16 Ivy and Smith be read a third time and finally passed. Any final comments from or questions from council? Seeing none. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that too is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Moving on to Jamaica Holdings. Who's got this one? Ms. Darling, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June, Planning Committee heard concurrent consent and zoning amendment application B 13921 ML and ZBA 6321 bylaw 2021-198 in the name of Jamaica Holdings Inc. The property is known municipally as 22 J18 Badrow Island. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to provide an exemption from the minimum lot frontage and area requirements. Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. No submissions have been received since Planning Committee last month. 2 minor amendments are required: that a covered area on the second story of a boathouse on the severed lot be prohibited, and bylaw 2004-104 be repealed. Staff would be happy to assist Council with any questions. And thank you.
Okay. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-198 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Jamaica Holdings Inc. Roll 42508 be read a first and second time. Comments on first and second? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. Let's go to Kelley. Minor amendment moved by Councillor Kelley, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2021-198 Jamaica Holdings Inc. And this amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation. Is hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall consist of prohibiting a covered area on the second story of a boathouse on the severed lot and repealing bylaw 2004-104. Any questions on the minor amendment? Call the question. All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. Third and final, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-198 Jamaica Holdings Inc. be read a third time and finally passed. Any comments? All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you. Let's move on to McArdle. Who's next? Ms. Darling?
Yes.
Yes, just need your camera. There it is.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June, Planning Committee heard zoning amendment application ZBA 6921, bylaw 2021-208 in the name of McArdle. The property is known municipally as Island M68 Unit Number 9. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling. The applicant also proposes to demolish the existing one-story boathouse and part of the existing docks to construct a new one-story boathouse with associated docks and swim dock. Exemptions are required for the front yard setback of the dwelling, cumulative dock width, and maximum cumulative first-story boathouse width. Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. No submissions have been received since Planning Committee last month. 2 minor amendments are required to prohibit the proposed dwelling to be below 226.7 MASL static floodline elevation and to restrict cumulative width to a maximum of 213 feet. Staff did receive a new site plan to reflect the changes requested by Planning Committee and have met the 213 feet of cumulative dock width. Staff would be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I also know that Mr. Allen has joined us today on this application. Good afternoon, Ryan. Did you want to add a comment?
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Thanks, Ms. Darling, for providing an overview. You're correct. A reduced front yard setback for a new dwelling, increased cumulative dock width for a new one-story boathouse, and increased dock width was proposed for additional dock. Revised site plan has been provided that has eliminated 28.8 feet of dock width and has addressed the committee's direction to provide 213 feet of cumulative dock width. I would also note that attached to the submission package are 2 positive supportive recommendations from the neighbors, as well as the existing dock width is 224 feet. So the proposal is a reduction below the existing amount. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have and would look forward to committee approving or council approving this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to first and second reading, moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-2008 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 McCardle be read a first and second time. Questions on first and second? All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you. We do have some minor amendments moved by Councillor Hayes. Seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2021-208 McCardle. This amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation and is hereby approved prior to third reading. These amendments shall consist of prohibiting the proposed dwelling below the 226.7 MASL static floodline elevation and restricting cumulative dock width to a maximum of 213 feet. Any comments on the minor amendment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That too is carried. Third and final, moved by Councillor Mazan. Seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-2008 McCardle will be read a third time and finally passed. Questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. We also are recommending, I believe this is designated to site plan control. I'm just going to change this to Councillor Kelley. Moved by Councillor Kelley, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-114 to designate site plan control part of Gilbreth Island, Lake Muskoka, part 1 to 3, Plan 35R 23482 Wood McCardle, Rule 8/1829 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Designating site plan control. Any comments? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you very much. Brown. Who's got this one? Mr. Allen, thank you for joining us. Mr. Saya.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, members of council. In June, Planning Committee heard a zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0222 in the name of Brown. This subject property fronts onto Lake Muskoka and is known as 1028 Lisley Road. The purpose and effect of this application is to provide relief from the maximum permitted lot coverage provisions in order to permit a proposed redevelopment involving the demolition of a gazebo, a small lean-to, and also the demolition of a single-story boathouse with a rooftop sun deck and docks. The proposal then involves the construction of a new single-story boathouse with a rooftop sun deck and a new configuration of docks. Planning Committee considered exemptions to lot coverage, cumulative dock width, cumulative boathouse width, and side yard setback requirements. And committee has recommended approval subject to several requirements. Firstly, recommended approval was conditional upon confirmation that a recently approved boundary adjustment has been finalized. In this regard, a transfer document has recently been submitted to staff, thereby confirming that the boundary adjustment has now been finalized. A recommended approval was also conditional upon the proposed lot coverage being updated to include sun decks that form roofed structures. It's important to note that while the proposal involves a reconfiguration of lot coverage, it does not involve an increase in lot coverage. However, when staff were on site, it was noted that the raised sun decks that are attached to the dwelling and to the garage use a decking material that forms a roofed structure and therefore contribute to lot coverage. The draft bylaw currently states a lot coverage amount of 12.9%, and the applicant has now advised that when the area of the sun decks is included, the lot coverage is 16.8%, and this number should therefore be updated in the bylaw. The recommended approval is also conditional upon a requirement to revise the site plan to remove the docks to the north of the proposed boathouse. Based on the direction provided by Planning Committee, it is the understanding of staff that a dock with a width of 5.4 feet running alongside the north side of the proposed boathouse would be acceptable, but that the two proposed dock fingers extending to the north should be removed to mitigate built form along the shoreline. This would allow docks with the same width on either side of the boathouse, but would not permit the additional proposed dock area extending to the north. Lastly, Planning Committee has recommended minor amendments to the draft bylaw in order to update maximum permitted lot coverage, as I've explained, and to correct and to replace the site plan schedule to show reduction in dock width. And I believe the applicant's agent here is as well today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sawyer, thank you very much. Mr. Fawner, welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Harding and members of council. I believe that my client, I'm hoping, is on somewhere too. I just have a number of people on my screen, but Wendy Brown is in attendance too, I understand. I'm going to stick to a script today so I can try and stick to my couple of minutes. So I do have half a dozen points that I do want to make. First of all, the purpose of the application was to add 116 square feet to a boathouse to moor a modern boat and move the shoreline structures out farther from the shoreline to protect the shoreline buffer. I think this in itself was, very reasonable request in the circumstances. And number two, there are a number of improvements being made to dock width, going from 82% down to 44%. And the side yard setbacks for the dock and the boathouse are both increasing. They would have increased more, except that moving it farther away would have impacted the bridge, if you will, coming from the shore. It would have impacted the shoreline buffer. Third point is that the property was purchased in 2015 and the legal non-complying structures were all there when it was purchased, and so my client did inherit those. In terms of lot coverage numbers, this is my fourth point. Lot coverage has been confirmed at 16.8%, and this increase is due to the presence of Duradeck. My fault, I didn't look at the decks. I went by what the surveyor had indicated, and I didn't even look at the decks while I was out there. A portion of land has been added in this case, as well as removal of structures to compensate for the small increase in the size of the boathouse. Lot coverage is something that deals with massing of buildings, and whether there's Duradeck there or not, that does not impact massing of buildings. And in fact, we could have agreed to remove some of the Duradeck and made it, from a numbers point of view, a more palatable application. But again, Duradeck does not impact building mass. And staff agrees with this position. I've had a discussion with Mr. Soya on that. I think the sticking point is my fifth point anyways, regarding the shoreline, regarding the dock, I'm sorry, and the width of the dock and the 2 fingers, as Mr. Soya has said. The shoreline dock exists currently. It exists at the shoreline. We are moving it out towards the end of the boathouse, but that is at 50 feet. As of right today, an addition can be made to the docks to go out 66 feet. And in fact, this dock could be constructed alongside their boathouse and extend out 66 feet. And that was noted in the staff report, and that's as of right. The impact, in my opinion, will be negligible. Moving it out certainly won't notice the difference from the out on the lake. And the neighbors are both in support of this application. This, forms part of a swim area that's very important to my clients. It will help to break waves. This isn't just, yes, they can sun on top of the boathouse, but they want access to the water, especially for swimming. This is also moving it out from the overhanging shoreline buffer that they're trying to protect. My last point is that if it is absolutely necessary that council wishes to have an extra step, and I know sometimes you withhold third reading, the preference would be to impose a holding zone. The reason being is if you withhold third reading, then my client's not in any sort of appealable position, and you're really kind of holding them to ransom in that particular case. So, they'd be removing structures, not even knowing that whether they're going to get third reading done or not. So I'd recommend a holding zone if you wish to have that extra step. And I've discussed that with Mr. Soya, and he doesn't have a problem with that. So those are my submissions, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Fawner. Just a quick question to Mr. Soya, because I don't notice in our recommendations today withholding third reading or an additional step in the process. Maybe Mr. Soya can explain to me. We've just got a minor amendment, I believe, that's being proposed. Sorry?
Yes, that's correct. So if there is, if committee or if council is in agreement with the reduction that is recommended to the dock, so the removal of those 2 fingers, then there would be a minor amendment. Through the minor amendment, a new revised site plan would show the removal of those 2 fingers, and the bylaw would be updated accordingly. So from a process point of view, if that's how council would like to proceed with those fingers not a part of the approval, then the withholding third reading would not be required. But I believe Mr. Sharp has turned on his camera. He might have some more to say on that.
Just noticed the same. Mr. Sharp, did you want to comment on this particular?
Your worship, and good afternoon, members of council. Just for complete clarity, in this particular instance, there is no need to withhold third reading or put a hold zone on the property. The minor amendments that we've put in front of you today are all that need to be approved if council is looking to bring this to a resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I also see Wendy Brown has joined us. Ms. Brown, would you like to comment at all? You are on our delegation to appear.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. We bought this cottage 7 years ago. We love Muskoka. We've been visiting for years. Our kids attended Pinecrest YMCA camp nearby, and we wanted a traditional place where we could enjoy nature, continue swimming, canoeing, etc. Our focus for this plan was by the water. Our 50-year-old docks along 82% of our shore are in poor shape, are inefficient, and are too close to the newer water levels. It's an eclectic collection of small dock parts, old, not particularly usable, and a bit of an eyesore. We also wanted to move the boathouse out from under the trees, which will further preserve the shoreline. The plan was to rebuild what we already had, a single slip boathouse with a small strip of dock down each side, further away from the neighbor, then move 2 fingers of dock, as you describe it, out beside it. With our plan, we create a consolidated dock that leaves most shoreline in a natural state and reinvents our dock space to be more efficient, usable, and family friendly. To date, Planning Committee, as you know, has approved the boathouse, but we need the dock area beside the boathouse that is in our plan and is currently denied. We plan to reduce the dock from 82% to 43% of our shore and position it away from the shoreline buffer. Next month, we become first-time grandparents. Our intent with the side dock is to create a family-friendly area beside the new boathouse for children, dogs, and seniors, an area for swimming, launching a canoe, and so on, with some protection from boat traffic in the busy bay. A useful repurposing of a current grandfathered dock system that serves little purpose as is. Nothing we are requesting is unusual or unique. Our neighbors are all in favor of our current plan and have sent in letters of support. Our motivations are family and nature focused, and it's a smaller overall development than existing. Given these objectives and values, we trust you will agree with and approve our entire plan, boathouse and dock. We have the same goals here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a clarification for staff, because the bylaw in front of us is actually removing both fingers of docks, which we discussed. So just want to make sure, Mr. Soya, what we are discussing here, or just confirm if we are removing these, because I think the request is to leave some fingers and a portion there too. If council has any appetite to reduce the docks from what was, but not down as far as where staff have recommended. Mr. Soya, maybe you can just provide some clarity so it's in your words and not just mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so just to outline what's before you today. Before you today is a approval of the bylaw as it stands would require the docks to the north of the boathouse to be removed. Now, at Planning Committee, there was discussion about leaving a strip of dock along that northerly side of the boathouse to equal the same width as the docks on the southerly side of the boathouse. And to clarify, so it's my understanding that that's the intent of Planning Committee, and it likely is as well of potentially of council. If we'd like to leave the 5.4 feet, it would be helpful if that was written into the resolution, just that number, 5.4 feet, because currently it just reads that the docks on the north side be reduced. It could read that it be reduced to 5.4 feet. And then the other alternative is for committee to consider other widths, obviously, based on what has been presented to council at the meeting today. I don't know if that clarifies it enough, or if there's any more nuances that you were wondering about, Your Worship.
Well, thank you. I think it certainly does. And just so that council is aware where we're at, right now the resolution removes the fingers. Our planners have sort of suggested that there's a little more clarity, that we discussed maybe I'll call it a 5-foot dock on the northern side, whatever that language would be, but the fingers themselves would be removed. Mr. Brown and Mr. Fauner are both recommending or suggesting or asking for the fingers to remain, and understanding that they truly are a reduction from what was there currently. So I'll look to council to sort of get an appetite of where we're at, where we want to be, or are we interested in trying to get a little bit further information on this one before we say yes or no in particular? Councillor Bridgman first, and Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. To Ms. Brown's point, I'm sitting here thinking, and with grandchildren and coming along, and if all you have is a sun deck in order to have your family out there, it'd be tough. I mean, I know we've got the little junior swimming pool on our dock, and if you've got different aged children, you can't be in I just think it's going to be difficult to make it family friendly for swimming if there isn't some sort of a deck area. So I'm not sure about the numbers, but I'm wondering if we took the back finger, the finger closest to the shoreline off, and perhaps reduce the dock to 10 feet by 15 feet out front. That still gives a pretty good area. And yet I'm a family area on the water with their little ones. So I'm open to all talk. I just thought I would let you know what I'm thinking right now.
Okay, so if I can summarize, I think Councillor Bridgman, what you're suggesting is on our agenda package on page 433, there's a bit of a site plan. The applicant's requesting the full site plan as we see it, I believe, but you're suggesting a bit of a hybrid version that would remove the dock on the shoreline, and out in the water where we see a measurement of 20.5 feet, you would reduce that to 15 feet, still giving them further reducing a little bit, but giving them a bit of a square sitting area, 15 feet by 15 feet, so to speak, at the end. I think that's what you're recommending. So I'll park that idea for a second. I'll hear from Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, and through you, I've been down to the property, and I believe that the actual view from the canoe is going to improve by this development. It is very open to the lake, so a family area for swimming is really a must. I don't see where the dock out front is going to cause any big issues. If we have to remove the finger at the back to get the dock at the front, I would definitely support that. But I would definitely support looking at this again to try and give them some kind of family area right on the water.
Okay, so Councillor Hayes, if I can, are you in favor of the as requested, which gives you, I'll call it 20.5 feet from the side of the boathouse, to create a bit of a U or a swimming area or, at the end of the day, our shoreline coverage, whether the dock is behind it on the shore or is out in the water, is somewhat moot based on the idea of the bylaws. So personally, I don't have an issue with it being on the shore. It's more the extent of how far out we decide to go across. I guess, where are you landing on right now? If we were
I'm happy with the site plan on page 433. I have no problem with that.
Okay, so Councillor Hayes is not necessarily recommending removal of those two fingers. Where is the rest of council at on this particular? Staff again have recommended the removal of the fingers, but I'm getting from Councillor Bridgman and Councillor Hayes right now the opportunity to create a bit of a little swimming area in this particular application. Anybody else want to chime in? Everyone's being silent, which is going to make this difficult. Still remaining silent. Okay. Councillor Edwards, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I really don't want to call a question and have something go south right now. Councillor Edwards?
Well, Councillor Hayes has been out on the property and seen it. And if it's a dock, as long as there's nothing else on the top of it, a pop-up gazebo later on or something like that, I could probably live with it. It'd be nice to get it back to, say, 15 feet by 15. And I don't have a problem taking the other off. I would leave it there. If you put the one out in the water, I would leave the back one. But I will, and that's support Councillor Hayes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kelley?
Thank you. And through you, I was just going to lend support to Councillor Hayes and Councillor Bridgman's suggestion that a family-friendly, modest variation is fine with me.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me just ask Mr. Brown, I guess, and Mr. Fauner, would you be amenable at this particular point to, as I say, the northern section of the dock is measuring right now, it looks like 20.5 feet from the side of the boathouse. Would you be okay to cut that back up by maybe 5 feet to 15 feet and still provide the U with some onshore perspective?
Yes, I would be, certainly. We'd like to make sure we've got that area.
Okay, so I'm seeing positive to that. Council, anybody have any negatives if we were to look at just cutting that back 5 feet? So I'm going to look at Mr. Soya and figure out what we would like to recommend within this minor amendment to restrict the docks. It looks like to a 38.4 feet in width, if I have done my math correctly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe your math is correct to take off the 5 feet from that, or 5.5 feet from that cumulative width. And so I think all that would be needed on that on today's resolution is to state that the cumulative dock width would be reduced to the 38 feet.
Right. So if we just did it as a minor amendment to restrict cumulative dock width to 38 feet 4 inches, I think is what we would, if that works, Mr. Soya. Okay, I'm going to do first and second reading, if I may. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelley. And be it resolved that bylaw 2022-12 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 Brown, roll 8327, be ready first and second time. First and second, all those in favor? That one's carried, thank you. Just add a...
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Minor amendment, I'll read it first, moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that Township Council amend bylaw 2022-12 Brown. This amendment is minor in nature and does not require further public circulation and is hereby approved prior to third reading. The amendment shall consist of necessary updates to bylaw 2022-12 to reflect a reduced dock width and to recognize an accurate lot coverage, and that cumulative dock width be restricted to 38 feet 4 inches. Mr. Soya, does that get us to the finish line? Just to double check, I see. I believe it does.
Yeah, I believe it does. It'll, yeah, once the site plan is received, it'll show that, and that will get us there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Fauner, you're okay with that? We are good. Okay, council, any further comments or questions on that resolution? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for input and explaining the use of the U. I'll call it a U on the side of your dock. Appreciate it. I have a third resolution moved by Councillor Everett, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-12 Brown be read a third time and finally passed. Any final comments? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Fauner. Thank you. I think you're going to be coming back at another point shortly. We'll have to turn your camera off. We're going to move on to charters. Ms. Darling.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June, Planning Committee heard zoning amendment application ZBA 0522, bylaw 2022-025 in the name of charters. The property is known municipally as 4 Silver Lake Lane. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to construct a new dwelling with an attached garage, sundeck, and a dock on an undersized lot, and that exceeding maximum lot coverage requirements. Planning Committee recommended to Council that the application be approved. No submissions have been received since Planning Committee last month. No minor amendments are required, and staff will be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to do first and second, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-25 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 charters, rule 5773 be read a first and second time. Comments, first and second? Call the question. All those in favor? That one is carried. Staff are not recommending any minor amendments. So third reading moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-25 charters be read a third time and finally passed. Questions, comments prior to third reading? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. Okay, Demirs, who's up? There we go, Ms. Walker.
Your Worship, can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear, 5 by 5. Those are
All right, so in June, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendments at BA 0622, bylaw 2022-026, the name of Demers. The subject property is known municipally as 1-J19 Armour Island. Bylaw 2022-26 will have the effect of providing an exemption from the maximum additions permitted to shoreline structures exceeding a maximum cumulative width requirements. In this case, it will permit 99.7 feet of dock additions where 75 feet are permitted. Bylaw 2022-26 will also have the effect of providing an exemption from the maximum length requirements in a restricted water body. The proposed dock is to be 64.1 feet in length where 40 feet is permitted, and the proposed single-story boathouse is to be 49 feet in length where 35 feet is permitted. In June, Planning Committee recommended approval of the application subject to one minor amendment. The following minor amendment is required: that the proposed boathouse, single-story boathouse that is required to contain a wet boat slip. No new submissions were received after the June Planning Committee meeting, and I have no further comments, but I'm happy to assist committee with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Make sure we still have quorum. I see a couple cameras off, but moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-26 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 demers rule 42445 be read a first and second time. Any comments? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you. Minor amendment moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Be it resolved, Township Council amend bylaw 2022-26 demers, and this amendment is minor in nature, does not require further public circulation, is hereby approved prior to third reading, and the amendment shall consist of requiring a wet slip in the proposed boathouse. Any further comments? All those in favor? Minor amendment. Maybe a bit of a prelude to tomorrow's discussion on wet slips and boathouses. Third and final, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kelley. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-26 demers be read a third time and finally passed. Any comments? All those in favor? That one is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Our last zoning bylaw amendment, and that is under the name of bot. Who's got this one? Starling.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June, Planning Committee heard zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0422, bylaw 2022-024 in the name of bot. The property is known municipally as 1209 Breezy Point Road, Unit Number 1. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to construct a two-story boathouse on a lot with less than 300 feet of frontage with an exemption for the width of the second story. Planning Committee recommended to Council that this application be defeated. No submissions have been received since Planning Committee last month. No minor amendments are required, and staff would be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do know we have a delegate or two on this particular one. Mr. Friedman is joining us. And I believe Mr. Fauner is also joining us, but I'll go to Mr. and Barbara Craig, I'm told. I don't have her down on my list. There we go. Mr. Fauner, Mr. Craig, there we go. Mr. Friedman, I'll go to you first. Sir.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I appreciate the opportunity to make these submissions. The application is for a variance allowing a second story on a boathouse at Unit 1, 1209 Breezy Point at a specified location shown on the site plan. The application was denied by the Planning Committee. With respect, I submit that the denial was wrong in law. No reason for the decision denying the application for the variance was provided. A single-story boathouse and docks at that location is permitted as of right. The reason why variance is required is because on a straight line, there's 236.41 feet. However, along the water's edge, the property is 492 feet. The Craigs, being the neighbor to the north, share the North Bay with Bot. The Craigs have a large dock in the middle of the North Bay and enter the bay with their boats regularly without any regard to Bot's use of the bay. Based on the present location of the proposed boathouse with the variance, no boat traffic will need to enter either the North or South Bay. Boat traffic will be in excess of 100 feet from the Craig's docks. Planning staff approved of the variance application for a second story. However, the Planning Committee denied the application. There was much discussion by the Planning Committee councillors about moving the location. However, the desired and chosen location is the best for all neighbors, both North and South Bay neighbors, and for the Bot. The neighbors who share the North Bay, which are the Craigs, raised a vista concern. With all due respect, this concern is not appropriate because there will not be any blockage of their vista to the west from their cottage or their dock. The neighbors, the Craigs, also raised a concern regarding boat traffic into the shared North Bay. The only boat traffic which will enter the North Bay is from the Craig's boats. No boat traffic will need to enter the bay based on the location of the proposed boathouse. For a single-story boathouse, a better location for boats would be further into the North Bay, rather than on the north edge of the point where it's presently located. We could move the location into the North Bay and still be able to build the boathouse single story as of right at that location. However, we have the BOT has filed an application for the permit to build the single story boathouse at the designated location. With respect, Mr. Mayor and councillors, there is no legal basis to deny the application for the second story variance, which has been approved by planning staff. I would ask council to approve the variance application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that very much. I will go now to, I'm not sure if Mr. Fauner or Mr. Craig, Ms. Craig would like to speak. Mr. Fauner.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Harding. Stephen Fauner once again on behalf of the Craig family, and I know that Barbara's going to speak up. I do have a few very brief points to make, and just to reiterate from our previous submissions. I think firstly, the location of the boathouse being and what's subject to the application is a two-story boathouse will definitely block some of the view of the Craigs. They're going to look directly at it. There's really no two ways about it, no choice in this particular case. The shoreline is directly in front of the Craigs, and it's just because of the shape of the shoreline, unfortunately. Secondly, it will affect the privacy for the Craigs and the enjoyment of their property, especially a two-story boathouse. I don't have any doubt about that. The Craigs have expressed two swimming concerns and potential boating hazard concerns, and Barbara may speak a little bit more to that. I want to say too that there is an alternative location for this particular boathouse. It is on the South Bay. The South Bay is quite a bit larger. The neighbors to the south have indicated that it will impact them, and I can understand that. However, the impacts would be less. There's definitely more impact of this boathouse on the north side of the point. I would like to thank any of the councillors that did go out to see the property. I know you don't get out to all properties and would prefer not to, but I think all the councillors that spoke up at planning committee that went out were definitely in agreement with the Craig situation and did not feel that approval of the boathouse was appropriate. So I'm glad everybody went out to see the situation. And again, I think if my last point is that, if you have in a case like this where you have impacts on the north side of the point and the south side of the point for a two-story boathouse, what that tells me is that the property is just simply not conducive to a two-story boathouse. And in my opinion, in this case, I believe the application should be denied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fauner. Ms. Craig? We'll just get you to unmute your microphone would be great. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, good. Yes, we have very serious concerns about the safety of the waters that we use. A proposed boathouse on the site that Mr. Friedman has mentioned will jut into our very narrow inlet to such a degree that the passage for any boats to get into our dock is going to be even challenged more. And besides which, all swimming activities that take place from our dock will be impacted by this. Yes, it obstructs the view, but it also poses a serious safety concern. I think the most important thing is that there is an alternative site, which is a far better site for the boathouse because the bay on the south side is at least 2.5 times as wide as we are on a very small inlet that is shared with the Bott Friedmans. But that inlet doesn't lend itself to any kind of building safely to be used by us. So I would say that because the Bott Freeman Cottage sits on the south side, and because the Bott Friedman dock, which already exists, is on the south side, that it's the logical and most natural place for it to be. I would say it's just, due to the concerns that we have, besides our enjoyment of the dock, besides the safety, there's also an environmental concern. The boat traffic will be far more on that with a boathouse right there. And that narrow inlet will be, it doesn't have any ebb and flow. It's just a tiny little inlet that, as I say, doesn't lend itself at all well to putting a structure there. And because the other side, just simply the other side of that point makes far more sense. Those are our very serious concerns.
Okay.
There is actually one more point that I'd like to make.
I gotta get you. We're at the 2-minute mark, so I'll give you another 10 or 15 seconds, but then I'll get you to wrap it up, please.
Okay, just in visualizing the scale of this boathouse in that narrow bay versus the scale of the boathouse on the opposite side of the point makes far more sense. It would not dominate the water and the landscape the same way. So there are all kinds of reasons why this is not a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone speaking today. Council, do we have any questions of those who've delegated us to us today? Okay, I have a resolution for first and second, moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that bylaw 2022-24 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14 bot roll 8589 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? All those opposed? There we go. It's defeated. Thank you very much. And I appreciate, we don't need to go to a third reading on that, obviously, but I appreciate everyone's opinions. Mr. Friedman, I certainly do understand your perspective, that there was no law for council to chime in on. The reality is it does not comply with our zoning bylaw, and that provides council the ability to chime in on that. I will say to the Craigs and Mr. Fauner, on the other side of the equation, Mr. Friedman is still entitled to build a boathouse in this particular area. And the scale of the boathouse, as long as it's one story, still will have an impact to boating and navigation and swimming and everything else. So, but council has chimed in on this right now. We have defeated this bylaw. And with that, I again thank you all for opinions as we've gone forward. So thank you. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Council, I think we're going to move into closed session. I believe that's the end of our regular viewing pleasure. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved that council in closed session convene at 3:05 p.m. for litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and that's one OLT matter and one additional matter, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and that's one matter pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. All those in favor? Carried. We will turn off our YouTube or